Hi friends, we are doing something different today. If we've not met before, my name is Eleanor, also known as Cosy Books and Knits Online. It is so lovely to have you here. I wonder if we might get some new people given that we're talking about a slightly different topic today. If so, I talk about a mixture of books, knitting, hobbies, lifestyle, living in the English countryside with my two cats. I'm getting married next month, oh my goodness. So here's one of the cats, Tilda. I'm doing a lot of wedding DIYs and crafts. I'm an artist, so, right, no, you don't need to sit there, do you? So there's always a lot going on this channel. Very often we're mixing my love of books and knitting together, but today I just wanted to talk about books because I feel like there are so many books I'm getting really excited for recently that I just wanted to chat about. So today we're going to talk about all of the books that I'm really excited to read over the next couple of months. I'm anticipating these will sort of take me through the summer. I'm not very much of a sticking to a TBR sort of gal anyway, so, you know, I'm sure there will be some other things to chat about in future that I've read, but these are the ones that are really exciting me at the moment that I've either got recently or have been sitting on my shelves waiting for their chance. Without too much further discussion, I reckon we should just get into it. So grab yourself a nice warm cup of something, a nice cup of tea, coffee, maybe your knitting project if you're one of my knitting viewers, and let's talk about some books. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the book I'm currently reading, but it's the first in a series. So the TBR element is the fact that I want to finish this series, and that is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. So I'm about halfway through the first book and I have the second book ready to go, although this is a trilogy and I believe there's a prequel out now as well. So if I enjoy this series, there's quite a lot more for me to get my teeth stuck into, and thus far I am really enjoying the first book, so I did pick up the second one to give a go. I don't want to look at the back of it because I don't want any spoilers, but this is sort of giving high fantasy Hunger Games. So Powerless follows a typical scrappy heroine. She's from the slums, and in a world of very powerful ruling class, she has no powers. So she's been hiding out because in this world, having no powers is a punishable crime. She's been hiding her lack of powers, but through an exceptional set of circumstances, she ends up saving the prince of this country, and as such, she is thrown into their elite magical competition, Hunger Games-esque style. And as part of that, she has to continue the charade of having powers whilst getting caught between the two princes of the country. One is a lovely, delightful, bountiful, brooding prince, and the other one is soft and gentle. However, there is a lot of power dynamics, and there is clearly a lot more to this realm and the circumstances that have led certain people to be in the powerful elite ruling class and some to have no powers and be outcast from society. So there's a real sort of power struggle brewing in this first book that I expect to carry on for the rest of the series. So I'm really excited to see where the politics of the world go beyond just this first book that has the competition trope in it. So I'm really excited to be able to pick it up because my prediction is that, you know, we'll cover this competition in this book and then the sort of fallout from that in the wider political scheme of the world in the rest of the series, knowing how I know my young adult and romantasy. So I feel like it's not breaking the mold, but I am having a really good time, and that's what matters. So I feel like this series and continuing on with this series will be one of my first ports of call for this summer. The next thing I don't actually have to show you because it's not out yet, but one of the things I am most excited to read this spring-summer season is the new Jenkins read, and it's called Atmosphere. I'm going to put a picture of the cover on the screen, and I'm just pulling up the description on my Kindle through the Kindle store so I can tell you what it's about because I don't have it to show you. So I'm a huge Jenkins Reid fan. I have read all of her books, I believe, and my favourites are Daisy Jones and the Six and the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. If you've not read them, I highly recommend them. But I just love her characterization and the way she takes these fictional characters and makes you almost unable to believe that they're not real. So Atmosphere is set in the 1980s, and we follow a astrophysics professor who is training to be an astronaut at the Houston Space Center, and we're following the group of astronauts that are in that training program and then on their journey towards this space mission. In the 80s, we're following their journey and then their mission, which I think perhaps there might be something that goes wrong. So we're following all the different members of this crew, engineers, astronauts in training, ready for this 80s space mission and everything that occurs. And the funny thing is that space does not interest me at all, but if Taylor Jenkins Reid is writing about astronauts, I am interested in astronauts and I will be reading about astronauts. So I don't know a huge amount around the circumstances of this book because I don't need to. I'll read it. I'll read anything Taylor Jenkins Reid writes. So that's definitely one of my #1 priorities this summer. Next up is another one this is a recent addition, perhaps one of my most recent additions to my TBR, and that's Deep Cuts by Holly Brickley. I'd not heard anything about this book until I was recommended it by my friend who works at my local Waterstones, and I went in just after I'd read The Favourites by Lane Fargo, and I said, I need something else that gives me those same vibes. And she said, Deep Cuts. And then since then, I've been seeing it everywhere, so I'm really excited to read this one. So in this, we're following a young couple in the noughties. I believe it's focused on songwriting and music, and I love anything to do with music because if you didn't know, I sing and I play guitar and I used to write songs. I don't really anymore, but I have a real interest in the music industry. So noughties, sort of, I believe this is a bit of a romance with that same sort of slightly unhealthy, slightly twisted relationships, I believe. But yes, so it's very much centered around music and the process of artistry. So it's these two characters who work together on music, and we've got one sort of watching from the sidelines as the other one is becoming an incredible, successful musician. And I think it's the dynamic between those two, which just sounds really, really interesting to me as somebody who loves music. And I think, speaking earlier about Daisy Jones and the Six being one of my favourites, the way that writing music and feeling music brings people together and exacerbates those relationships and emotions, I think is so interesting. So all of that, I think, packed into here sounds like something that's just so up my street, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. So the next one I have to talk about is Butter by Asako Yuzuki. This I've seen everywhere, but I wasn't super intrigued about it. But when I found it in a charity shop quite cheap recently, and the person working in the charity shop said that they'd just read it even though it wasn't their thing, and they'd really loved it, and that intrigued me. So this is about a gourmet cook who is a convicted murderer, and this cook has never ever spoken to the press, but our main character is a journalist who writes asking for a recipe, and it sparks a back and forth between them and this fascinating communication between a journalist and this murderer when people are very obsessed with this case. It sparks something different and dark and twisted, and it's this blend between food and people's relationship with food and crime and passion. And again, I know quite little about this, but it does sound really interesting. I love myself a thriller or a crime murder type book, but I like ones that have a little bit of something different. So this one's really intriguing me since I picked it up. Next we have My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I have had Stephen Graham Jones on my TBR for a really long time. I think on my Kindle I have The Only Good Indians, and then I also bought this one, which I believe is a series, I think. because I saw Stephen Graham Jones' most recent book and I thought it looked really interesting, but I think it was part of this series. So I need to go for this one first. And I have heard that this is just a complete homage to slasher films. And I don't love a slasher film, but I do love a horror book. So I feel like bringing those slasher horror themes into a book is definitely going to be up my street. So in this book, we have a main character, Jade, who is half Indian, has suffered abuse. She's had a pretty difficult life and she's living in a small hometown right at the end of high school. And her high school personal assignment that she's taking on, which is the last thing that she has to do, is a personal history of horror films. Through this, Jade starts to uncover a lot about the history of her small town and the questionable things that seem to have gone on there. So we're just getting that real whodunit mystery in with these horror elements, and that sounds really interesting to me and not really like anything I've read before. I'm a big Stephen King fan, but I've not really delved into the horror book genre as a whole, so I really want to. And if you have any recommendations for any horror books that I should also be looking at, then please let me know. Next up is my next classic choice. I've been not reading as many classics recently, but I wanting to pick some more up again, maybe some Bronte, but I think this is what I'm really excited for, and that is Maurice by E.M. Forster. This, I know that they've made a film of it, but I've never seen the film, and I believe it has a young Hugh Grant who's just sitting on the cover here, but I have heard that this is just one of those queer stories that everybody should read. I think its place in queer history and queer literature is very significant, and that makes me feel that I absolutely must read it. This book follows the character of Maurice, who is a very deep and unconventional type, and it's his homosexual awakening throughout his life and throughout people he encounters at Cambridge University and in other different circumstances. And I know that this had a very difficult route to publication and was written in a time when happy, joyful queer stories were not written. So the fact that it is published now, and when it was written in 1914, but I don't think it was published until the 70s, I feel that as a queer person that this just has to be on my TBR for this year. Now, the next one, I don't know what it is about summer, because I feel like this is the opposite of most people, but summer makes me want to read Gothic books. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's because in summer I feel like I get more immersed in books, because with long evenings I always sit outside and read for longer stretches than I feel that I do at other times of the year. So I feel like maybe I just have the opportunity to get more immersed, and that makes me want atmospheric books. But I don't know, it makes no sense. So a lot of the books that people will associate with winter, like mysteries and Gothic books and horror, I like to read in the summer. And I've definitely been craving some Gothic recently. I've seen The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, which I haven't picked up yet because my TBR is already too big, but it is tempting me. So I went looking for something else Gothic that I do have on my TBR, and I've picked up Sarah Waters' The Little Stranger. I've heard so much about this. It's an old classic ghost story. We're following a family in their manor house that goes back generations that is now crumbling, which just sets such an evocative Gothic scene to me already, just from a crumbling Georgian manor. And the family who live in that manor seem to be not quite up to date with society or struggling with the way things are changing. And we follow this doctor who goes into this house and realises that there's something darker going on there, and that this is maybe haunted. So I feel like this is just a typical crumbling manor, haunted house, ghosty, Gothic wonderland. Sarah Waters is a current modern writer. I think this was written in about 2009, but I have been really wanting to try this one. I feel like this is just a bit of a modern take on quite a classic Gothic ghost story, and I am really looking forward to trying a Sarah Waters book and to reading this one when I've heard so much about it and the atmosphere that it brings. Next up is a long-standing one on my TBR. This is These Violent Delights by Micah Nemerever. I've had this book for a really long time, and I feel like this summer is the summer I'm going to pick this up. This is set in the 1970s, and it's a queer story between two male characters who are at university together. One is grieving and struggling, and the other is this larger-than-life character, and they're just drawn together. But throughout the course of this book and their relationship, they're drawn together by their intellectual connection, but this develops into a quite an obsessive relationship, and it's really about the sort of all-consuming nature of this relationship, and dark obsession and violence, and all of those sorts of things just sound right up my street. So again, I've had this for a long time. It's supposed to give those sort of dark academia vibes of like The Secret History with those twisted dark main characters, and it just sounds perfect for me. So it's just crazy that I've not picked this up yet. Okay, and the last one I picked out, I picked this out because it's the one I already have on my bookshelf, but I feel like this is more of an author than a specific book, and that is Stephen King. I've picked out Misery here because it's one of the ones that's on my shelf that I haven't read yet that I really do want to read. As you can see, I've got quite a few Stephen Kings, but Misery is one of my favourite films, and I also do tend to then also prefer Stephen King's books over film adaptations, so I really do want to read this one. But I feel like there's also so many other Stephen King books that I want to read that I'm not sure whether I will end up picking this one up or if I'll pick up one of his other ones, but I really do feel like I'm got a proper hankering for Stephen King recently. I really do want to read The Shining, and I want to read his Mr. Mercedes trilogy because a lot of his new books coming out have been following the character Holly Gibney, who featured in The Outsider, but her story begins in the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, and then we go on to the books that follow her, as opposed to where she's a side character in The Outsider as well. And I really do want to read about her, and I want to read the books that Stephen King is releasing at the moment, but I can't because I haven't got that backstory yet, and I really do want to visit that first. So this may end up just being a bit of a placeholder for this video, and Mr. Mercedes could be the book that I go for next from Stephen King, but whichever book I go for, Stephen King as an author will absolutely be featuring this summer. Last summer I read Pet Sematary and The Outsider, and I think the summer before that I read Salem's Lot. So as I say, these books that are really not summery, I just get a craving for. I think it is just something about summer feeling like there's the time to sit down and get immersed in a story. And this summer I'm going on my honeymoon. I've got a little mini canal boat getaway holiday booked, so I feel like I'm gonna have time to settle into some of these stories and get really immersed. So I'm really looking forward to all of the wonderful things that I have to read, and I hope you enjoyed going through them with me. I feel like I've not really done too much of this on this channel because I wasn't sure if people wanted to see it, but today I just felt like I wanted to talk about it. So I hope you've enjoyed sitting down with me and chatting about which books I want to read. And if there are any that you're really wanting to read, please share them with me. If there's anything similar to the vibes of what I've shown you today that you think I would like, then please share that with me. And if you are not one of my regular knitting viewers and you're just here for the books, thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully I will see you again. Let me know if you like hearing more about books, because I'd love to do a video on all of the books coming out this year still in the second half of the year that I'd really like to read, because there is a lot of really great stuff coming out that I'm really looking forward to. So, and it would be fun to do this seasonally and maybe catch you up on whether I did read these books and what I thought of them. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.